Nancy Marie Benelak was born in Grass Valley, California. She grew up going to Hennessy School and later Nevada Union High School. At school, she was really good at sports like softball. She also led songs and other fun events. Outside of school, she loved bowling and often went with her friends and family. Even though she was thin, she ate a lot, her sister Linda said. After she finished beauty school, she got a job at a beauty center on South Auburn Street. Then, a friend invited her to Hawaii. There, she worked at another beauty salon. When she came back to California, she got a job as a court reporter, but something terrible was waiting for her there. On the evening of October 25, 1970, Nancy and her soon-to-be husband, Ferris Salami, came back to her apartment after hanging out with friends. Ferris, who worked as the chief public defender, spent a lot of time with Nancy in the days leading up to her death. They were even planning their wedding, set to happen very soon. When Ferris left Nancy's apartment around 11:30 p.m., she was in bed. He mentioned that she often left the sliding door to the balcony slightly open for her cat. The next day, Nancy didn't show up for work, which worried her sister Linda Cox. Linda got a call from Nancy's workplace saying she hadn't shown up, so she called some friends who lived near Nancy's place. They checked and found Nancy's car was gone. Linda then asked Nancy's co-worker Jack to check on her. Jack and the apartment manager went inside Nancy's apartment, only to find her dead with stab wounds. Nancy's sudden death shocked everyone who knew her. People wondered what could have happened in her apartment. The police started investigating, looking for clues to solve the mystery. Ferris was devastated by Nancy's death. He told detectives about their plans to marry and how he left her that night. He couldn't believe someone would harm her. As the investigation continued, detectives interviewed Nancy's friends, co-workers, and neighbors. They searched for any leads that could help them find the person responsible for Nancy's death. Nancy's family struggled to cope with her loss. They couldn't understand why someone would want to hurt her. They hoped the police would find answers soon so they could have closure and justice for Nancy. When the deputies got to the place, they saw that this case was a lot like another murder that happened earlier to a person named Judith Hikari. Both of the ladies were about the same age and lived really close to each other, less than a mile apart. Also, they were both going to get married soon. But apart from these things, the deputies couldn't find anything else connecting the two cases. After Nancy was killed, the sheriff's office talked to more than 500 people who could have been suspects. One of them was a guy called Richard John Davis and his roommate, but they both had good reasons why they couldn't have done it. Davis, who lived nearby, was 27 years old at that time and had a history of being a bit unstable because of drinking too much and sometimes being violent. But the evidence made the investigators think that the person who did it must have left in a car after killing Nancy, which meant they were probably not from the area. While this was going on, the people who investigated crime scenes were working really hard to figure out exactly what happened that night. Later, they thought that on the night of October 25th or early in the morning on the 26th, a man probably climbed up to Nancy's apartment using the balcony and then went in through the open door. The man put duct tape on his fingers to not leave fingerprints before breaking in. To do this, the person had to be pretty good at climbing, meaning they were probably young, maybe under 30. Also, they found a trail of blood that looked really scary, like it was red, and it went from the balcony to the parking lot. This made the investigators think that the person who did it might have been hurt with a knife, maybe on their hand or arm. Back in 1970, when crime scene investigation methods were not as advanced as they are today, investigators faced a lot of challenges because of the limited technology available. They couldn't gather as much information from a crime scene as they can now. For example, they could only figure out someone's blood type, which wasn't very helpful in solving crimes. But in 2004, almost 40 years after Benelak was killed, there was a breakthrough. Investigators found new ways to create a DNA profile using samples from Nancy's apartment. They hoped this would help them catch the person responsible for her murder. They kept searching for the suspect by checking DNA databases regularly, but they didn't have any luck. It seemed like the suspect had either stopped committing crimes or was really good at avoiding getting caught. Nancy's family started losing hope that they would ever find out who killed her. But in 2005, Detective Mickey Link started looking into the case. Even after retiring, she continued to work on finding Nancy's killer. Then, in 2019, she joined the investigation again as a volunteer because she was determined to bring closure to Nancy's family and make sure the person responsible was held accountable. In November 2019, the Sheriff's Office and District Attorney's Office tried a new approach called forensic genetic genealogy. They put the DNA profile on a website where people could find out about their family history. They hoped that someone related to the suspect would come forward, or that they could narrow down their search to find a match. Eventually, they found the source of the DNA, but it wasn't from anyone on the website. The police started collecting DNA samples from people they thought might be the suspect or related to them. They even got a sample from Davis's daughter. During the search, Detective Lynx managed to contact Davidson's roommate. The roommate couldn't remember how he met Davis or why he moved in with him, but he did remember that Davis had gone through a divorce and that his ex-wife later had a baby girl. Sadly, Davis didn't try to reconnect with his daughter or support her as she grew up. Detective Lynx later found Davis's daughter, who was now in her 50s. Despite the difficult circumstances, she agreed to help investigators by giving them her DNA. On June 13, 2022, Nancy's sister Linda received a life-changing phone call from Mickey. It was Nancy's birthday, and the call brought news that would alter everything. Lynx had received DNA results from the lab, which matched Richard Davis. But Lynx needed more information to crack the case. As Lynx dug deeper into the murder case, she found an old listing showing that Richard Davis used to live in the same apartment complex where Nancy was killed. This discovery started fitting the pieces of the puzzle together. Finally, Lynx ran DNA tests comparing the daughter's DNA to blood samples taken from the crime scene. The results shocked and relieved her. It was a match. The truth about Nancy's murder was finally uncovered. Throughout the investigation, Lynx faced challenges and dead ends, but her determination and persistence paid off in the end. With the help of Davis's daughter and advancements in DNA technology, justice was served for Nancy and her family. Detective Mickey Lynx worked tirelessly, bravely pursuing leads and clues, ultimately unraveling the mystery surrounding Nancy Benelak's tragic murder. His dedication bore fruit when the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office made a significant announcement disclosing the identity of the perpetrator, 27-year-old Richard John Davis. Contrary to initial beliefs, Davis hadn't fled the scene but had lingered nearby, concealed in the community where he committed the dreadful act. Though the truth emerged, it brought a mixture of emotions, a bitter realization that closure and justice would forever elude Nancy's loved ones. The revelation was particularly poignant for Ferris Salami, Nancy's would-be fiancé who had long hoped for answers but passed away in 2004 without witnessing this resolution. Similarly, Davis, the perpetrator himself, had met his demise in 1997 due to complications stemming from alcoholism, evading any legal consequences for his actions. This left a void in the pursuit of justice, leaving Nancy's family and friends grappling with a sense of injustice and unfinished business. Despite the absence of legal repercussions, the unveiling of truth offered a semblance of solace to Linda, Nancy's sister, and her husband Tom. Finally unburdened by the uncertainty and speculation surrounding Nancy's fate, they could now begin the process of healing and closure. Davis's meticulously planned entry into Nancy's apartment, using tape to obscure his fingerprints, suggested a chilling premeditation to his crime. While his motive remained elusive, detectives theorized it might have stemmed from unrequited romantic feelings towards Nancy, culminating in a tragic outburst of anger or jealousy upon learning of her impending marriage. Later on, Davis sat with the detectives and his roommate for questioning. It turned out lucky for him that nobody checked his arms for knife wounds. If they had, he might have ended up in prison for the rest of his life. Davis was known for getting angry quickly, but he wasn't in the CODIS database because he only had a minor DUI charge, not any serious convictions. The sheriff's spokesman, Lieutenant Rodney Grassman, read a statement from Linda. She thanked Lynx for not giving up on the investigation. Linda admitted she had almost lost hope that they would find out what happened. In a written statement, Linda talked about how she and her husband Tom often thought about how much Nancy would have loved their ranch. They imagined her enjoying the animals and the wide open spaces. It was hard for them not being able to share news about their family with Nancy, but they were glad that Nancy was finally at peace. If you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing to the channel for more updates and stories like this.